Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome back to Test Talks. I hope you're all doing great. In our previous video, we traveled through the early history of English literature from the Old English period to the Age of Sensibility. Today we're going to continue that journey. So, let's start with the Romantic Age. The Romantic Age traditionally begins in 1798 because this was the year when William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge published lyrical ballads, and this book marked a major change in English poetry. The Romantics moved away from the strict rules of the previous age, and instead they focused on nature, imagination, emotion, freedom, and individual experience. The five major Romantic poets are Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley, and Keats. Wordsworth is especially famous for his love of nature. Coleridge is well known for the rime of the Ancient Mariner, and Byron, Shelley, and Keats produced some of the most memorable poetry of the Romantic period. There were also important prose writers such as Charles Lamb, William Hazlitt, and Thomas De Quincey. So, in simple words, Romantic literature is the literature of imagination, emotion, and nature. Now, let's move forward to the Victorian Age. The Victorian Age began in 1837 when Queen Victoria came to the throne, and it continued until 1901. This was a period of enormous social change. Britain was experiencing industrialization, urbanization, scientific development, and social reform, and naturally, these changes appeared in literature. Victorian writers often wrote about poverty, social injustice, class differences, morality, religion, and the problems of society. The novel became especially popular during this period. Some of the most important novelists were Charles Dickens, George Eliot, the Bronte sisters, Thackeray, and Thomas Hardy. Charles Dickens gave us famous novels such as Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, and Great Expectations. Thomas Hardy wrote novels such as Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Far from the Madding Crowd. Among the major Victorian poets were Alfred Lord Tennyson, Robert Browning, and Matthew Arnold. So, if we want to remember the Victorian age in a few words, think of society, morality, industrialization, and the great Victorian novel. Now we enter a very different world, the modern age. The 20th century brought enormous changes. There were two world wars, rapid industrialization, urban growth, and new ideas in psychology and philosophy. All of these changes had a powerful effect on literature. Modern writers began to question traditional ideas, and they experimented with new literary forms and techniques. Some important features of modernism are fragmentation, alienation, symbolism, experimentation, and the famous technique called stream of consciousness. Some of the major modern writers were T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, D.H. Lawrence, E.M. Forster, and W.B. Yeats. T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land is one of the most important poems of modernism. James Joyce's Ulysses is famous for its experimental style, and Virginia Woolf used stream of consciousness in novels such as Mrs. Dalloway. So, modern literature often reflects a world that feels uncertain, fragmented, and rapidly changing. And now, postmodern and contemporary period. After the Second World War, literature entered another new phase. Postmodern writers began questioning many things that earlier writers had taken for granted, such as truth, reality, identity, history, and language. Postmodern literature is often associated with irony, fragmentation, parody, intertextuality, experimentation, and multiple points of view. Important writers include Samuel Beckett, Harold Pinter, Salman Rushdie, Kazuo Ishiguro, and Zadie Smith. Samuel Beckett's famous play, Waiting for Godot, is an important example of the theater of the absurd. Contemporary literature has also become increasingly multicultural, diverse, and global writers from different cultures and backgrounds now contribute to English literature. and literature continues to evolve with changes in society, technology, globalization, and new ways of telling stories. And that brings us to the end of our journey, from the Romantic Age all the way to the postmodern and contemporary period. I hope this video helped you understand these literary periods, not just as dates and names, but as different stages in the development of English literature. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Text Talks. Allah